How are you? Great. Baltimore treating you okay so far? Good. Okay, a little bit of interactive moment here. Can you raise your hand if you have been part of creating a space that was once vacant into a vibrant space? Great. Now, can you raise your hand if you felt like it was really successful? Lots of hands. Raise your hand if you've engaged in this process and felt that it was not so successful or you've had some disappointments along the way. Lots of hands too. Okay, so we know that it's hard, right? There's some hard work in here. So part of what we're here to really talk about is young people's perspective on how you make change and the things that they experience and the bumps that they experience along the way and how to be as inclusive in that process as possible. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves a little bit. Do you want to say your name, anything about your current school or where you went to school? And then I'd also like you to say your favorite thing about Baltimore.
Okay, I'll start.
And your role at Newlands.
Okay. My name is Daniel Brogden. I go to Digital Harbor High School. I'm in my junior year. And you said the next thing was like, what's our favorite thing?
What do you do at Newlands?
Oh, what I do at Newlands? Well, at Newlands, I help out a lot with junior team, where we basically bring in youth from the city and we teach them how to work with the cameras and how to kind of use it to add and help out the cause to rebuild the city. And one thing that I really love about my city is the large amount of opportunities that you have in Baltimore. And a lot of people don't see it, but it's all over the place. Actually, how I got this job working with Newlands is that there's so much that you can get into, and there's so much that can kind of shoot you to like a really far distance and help you uplift everyone around you.
I'm Taylor Evans. I am 23 years old. I'm a graduating senior at Morgan State University. I am the production leader, and I'm the junior team leader at Newlands. And I mean, we all work together, so we all do a little bit of everything. And one thing that I love about Baltimore is, I just love my city. I love the people. I can't really say one thing. I love everything about Baltimore for the most part. So I've never had a bad experience. Well, I haven't really had a bad experience in Baltimore. I'm from Baltimore, so it's home.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Evelia Miller. I'm also 23 years old. I'm the new director at Newlands. I'm a recent graduate, last year actually, from Morgan State University as well. And one thing I love, well, Baltimore is my second home. And one thing I love about this place, I love the art and the feels, like how you feel when you walk outside. And if you're having a bad day, you can like look up and there's a mural and it's like, oh, this is so beautiful. And it makes you feel happy again. So that's like one thing I really love about Baltimore.
Great. And I think Taylor is going to say a little bit more about what Newlands does.
So yeah, at Newlands, basically we create media to make people aware of the issues that are going on in our city. So, for example, over the summer, we made a film basically about just growing up in the city to try to aware people about how it is to grow up in Baltimore, or any city like Baltimore, the struggles of being a young Black person growing up in Baltimore. We've recently made a film that you can check out on YouTube. It's called we have a series called Blackonomics, and one of them is about housing. It's our housing episode where we talk about just it's called, sorry.
I'm blanking on the name too.
Yeah, I know that.
It's about housing.
Yeah, it's about, it's about housing and just basically.
Was it redlining?
No, the name of the actual film. Oh. It's okay. Anyway, it's called Blackonomics, and it's about housing and how basically there's not a lot of fair housing in Baltimore. How just the problems that go along with housing and how there's so many vacants and how there's so many homeless people. and all of the issues that are around housing. And just like I said, to aware people and to educate people about housing in Baltimore and cities alike. So we make films just like that, films that will aware people about different issues.
Great, thanks. Would you talk a little bit about, and maybe Evelia, we'll start with you. Would you talk about how vacants have impacted you or your community?
Sure. So, well, I'm originally from New York City, Queens, but I did come to Baltimore to further my education, and that's how I got to Morgan State. And when I came to Baltimore, it was kind of a cultural shock because in New York, there's so many people there. So most places are occupied where you live. And even if it's a bad neighborhood, it's still a whole bunch of people living there. But here, it's like you can literally go outside and walk a block, and it's miles of abandoned houses, but the poverty rate is so high. So it's like, it's a conundrum, actually. Because it's like, how can so many people be in this one space, but there be so many homeless people and so many empty houses where trees are growing out of them? Anything else I'm supposed to say? Okay. Yeah.
Great. Daniel, do you want to, Taylor, do you want to talk about how vacant buildings have impacted you or your community?
Yeah, so I live right in the middle of the city, off of Greenmount Avenue, if anybody's familiar with that. And I've lived there my entire life. Basically, I'm fortunate to have both of my parents, and they own our house. And so I've lived in the same house my entire life growing up. I'm the only person in my entire family from Baltimore. But all of my friends in my neighborhood, or not only in my neighborhood, my friends that I went to elementary, middle school with, high school, none of them own their houses. So everybody rented or rents. And a lot of people in my neighborhood, they would move around the neighborhood. You know, they would live in one house, and then a few years later, they would move to another street within the same neighborhood. And so that's just an experience that, I've had, but also we have a lot of vacant homes, not specifically on my street, but within the neighborhood, 5-minute walk, you might find a whole block that has one house that isn't vacant, but every other house is. And, of course, vacant homes bring rats and bring, they're not pretty to look at, but also I've had experiences where there's been vacant buildings that have been turned into stores, that aren't favorable for my neighborhood. Stores that I wouldn't want to come to my neighborhood, and that you probably wouldn't want to come to your neighborhood either, because where I live at, you can get a chicken box. You can have about 10 different places you can get a chicken box from within a 1-mile radius. There's a bunch of places you can get liquor from, and a bunch of places you can get hair from. And none of these places are really beneficial, and they're not owned by people who live in my neighborhood either. So recently, there was, better yet, a few years ago, there was a place that wanted to turn it into a Burger King, but there were kids that would have to walk past there on their way home from school, so the neighborhood rallied against it because that's just another fast food spot that's not healthy. So, they fought against it, and the neighborhood won. But now, years down the line, they're changing that same spot into it says grocery on it, but in small print it says carry out. Grocery meaning probably frozen foods, and tobacco outlet. So, you can get cigarettes, and you can get frozen foods, and you can get a chicken box there. Everything that you don't want coming into your neighborhood to just further kind of destroy your community. So, it's like we have these vacant homes, and the community doesn't want these things, and they might give us what we want for a couple of years, and then everybody will forget about it, and a few years down the line, they'll still put that chicken box spot or that liquor store when everybody has forgotten about it. And that's but that's extremely disrespectful to the people who live in that community, because nobody wants that in their community.
And so when that space was a vacant space, there was some activism around, or some input that was sought, is that right?
Well, no, so it wasn't a vacant, it was a vacant space for it to be, people, they wanted it to be what's it called, the Burger King. But like I said, the community won against that. But somebody still bought it, and they made it into a hair store. So it was a hair store for a whole bunch of years. And then I guess the hair store just recently closed, and now it's becoming a carry-out / hair / tobacco outlet / grocery, which is crazy. Because who wants to buy hair where they buy food, but whatever. So, you know, it was a vacant space for a little bit. And I mean, a hair store, you know, I live in a black community, so it's like, you're gonna have hair stores. But at the same time, we don't want another chicken box place. There's a McDonald's across the street and a KFC across the street. And then down the street, there's 3 different chicken box places already. So it's like, you know, around the corner in a different neighborhood, I live in Better Waverly. Around the corner in Charles Village, there's Chipotle's and Starbucks and Barnes and Nobles. And that's the Johns Hopkins area. But we don't have that in our neighborhood, so.
Thanks. Do you want to talk a little bit, Daniel, about what got you started in wanting to make change in your community?
Actually, to kind of piggyback off of what she was saying too, basically seeing how the city has like its different areas where some are food swamps, some sanitation issues, and also myself from growing up in a family or with my single mother who was a renter. I didn't really, like my family didn't really have a lot of say-so inside community involvement meetings. So I kind of didn't get the aspect of like what it's like to kind of fight against it. But that was just that one thing. But also, back to what I was saying more importantly, just kind of seeing like how the city just had like some really like major keys that were lacking. And I felt like I had to kind of do something about it. And then I kind of had like a realization that really pushed that to let me know that this is something that I really need to do, because I catch the bus, the 5 from Urban Avenue all the way to downtown, and I walk across the harbor to Covington Street, where my school is located, Digital Harbor. And walking through that area and seeing how the residents kind of change in my trip on the bus, and seeing how the areas with the vacant houses look, and then seeing how the areas with no vacant houses with all nice and clean environments versus raggedy and dirty environments. That kind of pushed me, that drove me to the point that it was like, okay, now I have to really stand up and make a difference. But just seeing it, that was already a nudge, but it was also the other aspect of the sensitivity, because I've been going to my school for 3 years, and it took me almost 2 years to actually acknowledge that these problems are really around my city as far as segregation and how it manifests in my city. So I kind of had to realize that my new mission now is to like make sure that I work with Newlands and try my best to open eyes to this segregation so that we can then make positive steps forward.
Great. Anybody else want to answer that? I think you wanted to.
Well, I mean, I definitely agree that, you know, going through Baltimore, you see a huge difference. You know, it's almost like, am I still in the same city? From one neighborhood to the next that could literally be around the corner. Like I said earlier, you know, I live, well, like he just said, we live in the city, but it's so segregated here. From my neighborhood, which is, I mean, it's diverse in my neighborhood, but it's not like right across. Like I said, I live off of Greenmount Avenue, and like I said, I'm the only person in my family from Baltimore, and my family doesn't visit much, and I think it's because of the stigma against Baltimore. And, you know, if I tell somebody, oh, I'm from off of Greenmount Avenue, they say, oh, you from the hood. And I'm like, well, I mean, nothing's ever happened to me. You know, I've had a great time living there. And so, but if you cross over Greenmount Avenue, you go into Charles Village, which is like this beautiful neighborhood with these beautiful homes. I don't remember ever seeing any vacant home in that neighborhood. Like I said, you have these healthy food spots. I mean, Chipotle is not the healthiest, but it's advertised as a healthy food place. You know, you have salad places you can like literally just go and get a salad from, cafes, and no vacant homes. but right across the Greenmount Avenue is completely different. And so, you know, you can go within a 5-minute radius of Baltimore and see a whole block of vacant homes in a low-income area, right to a, you know, place where you see houses that are like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so Baltimore is definitely very segregated when it comes to the housing, the people, the money.
Do you want to say anything else about what makes you want to make change, Evelia or Teal?
Yeah, that definitely makes you want to make change, because nobody should feel like, you know, I can't go into that neighborhood because I'm not worthy, or I look at my neighborhood and I see these vacant homes and I don't feel like anybody cares about my neighborhood because there's rats running around, you know, in the streets, or there's trash, you know, on Greenmount Avenue where there's a bunch of food places and they're not picking up the trash. There's a bunch of trash on Sundays. So it's like, that makes you want to make change, because everybody, you know, I have a beautiful community. I have to think that, I mean, it's true, but I have to think that because I've lived there my entire life. But it's like, some people don't think that. But like, that just makes me want to make change, because, you know, everybody deserves to feel like where they live at is valued by the city, and not just somewhere that if you walk around the corner, oh, I can see that this community has, you know, the city cares so much more about this community than they care about my community. That's just not fair.
So I want to think for a second about, so there are lots of challenges in our city and lots of other cities, and young people are not often included at the table when we're trying to problem solve these issues. So why might that be important? We'll start with Evelia. If you're ready. If you're not ready, we can pick on somebody else.
Okay. There's many different reasons why. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So I think that there's many different reasons why youth voices aren't at certain tables. Maybe one, we aren't invited to them. Like, this opportunity for us to come speak to a conference of thousands of people, the average 23-year-old isn't afforded this opportunity, or neither is the average 16-year-old. It's because of the spaces that we're in that we're able to get these opportunities. So I think that, like, people who are trying to make the change, they don't look for the youth perspectives, or if they do, they're not looking they'll go to school. But what about the people who aren't really too fond of school, but they like to play sports, and like, they have a mind too, or a voice too. So I think that's another reason why, one reason. Another reason, I think, is because youth voices are often marginalized in large spaces like these, or in spaces where it's a lot of adults. You ask for a youth perspective, and then when you get the youth perspective, you kind of diminish it, or not saying you personally, just you as adults. But yeah, you had to clarify. You guys would, like, you know, tend to just be like, okay, well, they're still kids, so maybe they don't know what it is that they're saying, when we have minds too, and they work really well. And lastly, I think that after you get the youth voices, or the youth voices are heard, there's no action. So you'll say, oh, we want youth voices, and you get the voices, and then that's it. It just stops there. There's no, like, execution of the things that people talk about, or like the adults don't necessarily fall through on their side of the bargain. So when things like that happens, it's like youth don't want to come to these spaces, because why would I come somewhere where every time I open my mouth, it's like, nope, not that one, I'm sorry, maybe use another perspective. Or it's like, okay, let's do X, Y, Z, and then you're like, yeah, great, we're gonna do it, and then 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month down the line, and you call a follow-up, like, did you guys ever do this? And like, oh no, we went with something else. So it's real discouraging for youth voices in general when adults ask and don't follow through, or don't honor their side of the commitment. And yeah.
Did you want to add anything, Daniel, about the importance of youth voices and any personal experiences you might have?
Well, personally, I think that youth voices are crucial, because you've come with a different perspective than many adults. Usually a more optimistic perspective. And in a situation when dealing with issues like this, it's always good to have a perspective that's open to change and open to doing new things that can positively affect our current situation. So yeah, that was pretty much just kind of short, but yeah, that's I think it's important.
Short, brilliant, yeah. So what do you think would make Baltimore better?
More youth voices.
Do you want to say more about that? Or you can be short and sweet too, if that's fine.
I mean, I feel like for Baltimore to be more, you said a better place, right?
Yeah, would your ideas be for how to make Baltimore better as a young person that has a lot of hope and brilliance?
The one thing that could be done to help Baltimore become a better place is to educate the people about the things that are going on. Like I said, I went to school and it took me almost like 2 years to acknowledge the segregation that I witnessed almost every day. So we kind of need to educate the community on these different issues and the importance of trying to address these issues and make an effort. Because without it, then we'll continue to have people that had my story that didn't make it. You know, they'll have the story where it's like they saw the segregation, but nothing was done about it. And what did I really do?
Anybody else want to share something that you would do to make Baltimore better?
I mean, I agree with what Daniel said. Definitely educate the people in power about what's really going on, because I definitely think that it's not necessarily that people don't care. It's about people, I think it's that people just don't know. I had a professor last semester tell me, because I'm a filmmaker, so I wanted to make a film about I like making films about Baltimore and the issues that go on in Baltimore, and he told me, he said, people who aren't from the hood don't care about the hood. And that bothered me. I mean, that was last semester, and it still bothers me to today. And I mean, I went on and made a film, but it's like, you know, that just made me so upset, because it's like, I don't think that it's not that people don't care. I think they just genuinely don't know, you know, what's really going on and how vacant homes really affect people who live right next door to them. I mean, some people probably don't care, but I definitely think that it's a good amount of people who just, you know, need to be educated about the issue. And so people who can be in power, people who are in power, and have that ability to make the change in the communities, I think that educating them could definitely make Baltimore better. And just, you know, because if you see a beautiful neighborhood, then for the people who live in the neighborhood, if you walk outside and you see beautiful homes and flowers everywhere and no trash, then you're going to value your neighborhood a lot more than if you know, see the opposite of that.
So there are 2 tiers of education that you both are talking about. You were talking about young people and people from maybe lower income communities having an education about the challenges that exist, so that there's raised awareness about how to grapple with some of those issues productively, maybe understanding history, background, and context of those issues. And you're talking about people in power also learning about how to listen to folks that are coming from those spaces, so that there's communication.
Yeah, so educating everybody about, like, everything you just said.
I mean, my perspective is a little different, but very similar. I believe that humility and humanity is what's gonna really strike the change, because yes, people don't know, but people do know, and they still don't care. A lot of people in power know what's happening in these communities, and everything happens for a reason. I don't think that anything that happens is by accident. It's very seldom that people in power make really huge mistakes. But I think that people genuinely don't care about lower income civilians and the things that they face on a day-to-day basis. People see money. When they see like these vacant homes, they see money. And they're like, well, we can make it to whatever we want because we're gonna make money and it's gonna come back to our pockets. It's not about the money going to the community or helping the little boy that has to walk past all of these businesses, but not one caters to him. People don't think about that. So I personally think that humility and humanity is like gonna strike a change that no one's gonna be able to stop. But to make a change and to actually really care about a cause and to get past the lower income or the high income or black or white or Spanish, you just have to care. It's not about what the person looks like, it's about caring about who the person, like just caring in general about the seed that's being planted. It's like if you try to grow something and you don't nurture it, it's gonna not grow. It's gonna just sit there and rot up and be dry. So humility is the way, man. If you acknowledge that there's something going on and that you want to make a difference, I think that would go further, way further. And educating definitely falls underneath humility because you have to be humble. You have to humble yourself to learn. That's a fact. Like you can't just, I know everything. It's like, no, in order to learn something, especially like adults, you guys are often the teachers because you're older, but you guys want to learn from us. So you guys are you're humbling yourself, just sitting here listening to us and letting us tell you what to do. Thanks.
Awesome. So I think we have a little time for folks to ask questions, and if you wanted something to sort of guide your questioning, one thing that occurs to me just listening and thinking about this topic is that there's a lot in the details, so I think we all have a philosophy that development or change in communities should involve the people that live in those spaces, but it's hard. So if anybody wants to share sort of a struggle moment and maybe a question embedded in that struggle, that would be interesting.
We don't bite.
Or any other question that comes to your mind. But that's just what occurred to me that you might think about. Oh, yes, mics on the, I don't see one there. So raise your hand if you're interested in asking a question.
Yep. Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
My name's Michelle, coming here from Detroit, Michigan, and I'd like to ask, any one of the three youth, talk to me about what New Lens means to you. How do you represent New Lens within your community and what it means to you, please?
I said Taylor. You want me to start?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
So New Lens. New Lens is, when I first heard of New Lens, when I first had the opportunity to be a part of New Lens, I was like, this is the perfect job for me because one, we started as a production company, so, and like I said, I'm a filmmaker. And then we get to teach youth about how to teach youth, skills, a skill that most schools don't teach you, how to, make films, and that can make you a lot of money. So that's like inner city kids learning how to use camera equipment, and then and make documentaries and short films out of them. And then it's right in the community. And so, and we get to educate the community through our films. So New Lens is like so important to me because we have really deep conversations with high school students about what's going on and what really affects them. And a lot of people might think that high school students or people even my age just don't have the intellect to talk about these issues or don't care about these issues, but they're really important to us. And just to have a space that you can come to talk about these things, and then you can make films to, to further your opinions or to further your thoughts, and then show other people to educate more people about how you feel about what's going on in your community is really important because public schools don't really give you the opportunity to do that, to really talk about what's happening in your community and what's happening growing up inner city youth in Baltimore. So, New Lens is like really, really important to the community because it's a free program, and not only free, we pay our junior team members to come and talk about and create, talk about the issues and to create. So, New Lens to me is just something that's extremely important, something that I think every community needs because it's just so many things that New Lens offers and that people can take away from it.
Great. You want to say more?
I don't know. Should I?
I don't know.
You want to know?
What?
I don't want to.
You want to? I mean, okay, we can both, I'll be short. But to me, Newlands is like a happy place because I get to do I went to school for broadcast production. So I get to do the videography and the production aspect, but you get to do real activist work with Newlands, and I think that in my new role, that's what I'm like starting to love way more. Before I was just doing a lot of films and editing and shooting, but now that I'm the new director, I do a lot of work. Period. But as far as activist work, I've been working really right hand with advocacy and going to police reforms and going to budget meetings and being a lot more involved in a space that I've ever been, but in a space that I've always wanted to be in to make the change. So it's like a really great opportunity for anybody that walks through our doors to just make that change that they want to create.
I don't know if folks caught that, but we're actually a youth-led organization. So I was the director of Newlands and stepped down this summer, and Evelia is our new executive director. So this is sort of pretty.
Oh man! You guys applaud it.
There's lots of levels of listening to youth voice, and the highest form of listening to youth voice is actually having them be in positions of power where they're getting to put their thinking forward in so many ways. So anyway, more questions?
Hi, my name is Cindy from Cambridge, Maryland, and you asked about an experience to just describe. I work for the county of Dorchester and I'm responsible for the tax lien foreclosures. And so I get to go into many, many neighborhoods and see the conditions of where people are living. And one particular street in Cambridge is very difficult. And we owned a piece of property there, so I had to go put a sign on it. And there were always people in the street or on their porches, and it was like a big joke to them. And the street is narrow, there's no sidewalks, there's no place to park. For years, the houses have been owned by slumlords, many of whom have been in public power in Cambridge. I just wanted to share that experience, that it was a little difficult to get the people there, that nobody's cared about them for many, many years. So now we want to care, and to engage them and not make it so it's not a joke anymore that we're trying to do something to demolish this really bad house, so that's no longer a blight right next to them. I mean, I don't have a lot of power in that regard, but I engaged everybody that I could when I was doing that. So I just wanted to express that experience. So.
Great. Yeah, please, Evelia.
Thanks for sharing your story, Cindy from Cambridge. I think that when starting over with communities or being in spaces where no one cared before, but now you want to care, trust is a really big thing. Building trust and maintaining that trust and not breaking that trust. Because in lower income communities, trust has been broken for years before I was even born. So, to mend something of that, that's been that broken, you really have to be really transparent with the people that you're dealing with and really clear in what you want to do, where you're going to go, how you're going to get this done, how much of their opinion is going to be used, how little of it is going to be used, and even if you're going to use it at all, if you're just wondering. I think that transparency and trust is really, really, really crucial when you guys, all of you guys here, are trying to make the change in communities that have vacant homes. I think that in honesty, don't be a liar. God doesn't like ugly. So, just saying, please, because, I mean, as a youth, I can really relate to these lower income communities just off the space of somebody wanting to do something but not being honest and doing it. Anybody can relate to that as a human being if you've ever been lied to. So I think that you guys should always remember that when making changes. Just remember, like, to be really honest with people, because the relationships that you build and the visions that you have for spaces will never come true if you're not honest with people, and you'll get a lot of pushback, and you don't want that.
I have another
Yep.
question.
My name is Tim from Roanoke, and I work with a grassroots nonprofit. I notice you all have a great sense of hope, and I get a feeling of a sense of power. The community I work in, majority are hopeless and therefore feel powerless. How is it different here, or how do you overcome that?
Good question.
No.
Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, we're comfortable. But when faced with a lot of challenges that kind of seem like every next move you make is going to be a failure, you kind of have to see past the failure, and honestly, when dealing with humans, it's not an option. Like, you have to make it work. If it's not doing good right now, then you're not done yet. You got more that you need to do. And I've came across times where I felt like it was hopeless too, actually, recently. But it came back to me that most of the work that I do right now, even at a young age, is bigger than me. So even if I feel like it is hopeless, I still have to keep, like, grinding. I still have to make sure that I do what I possibly can do as a small cog in a machine to make things flow.
I was just at this youth development training on Saturday, with Family League, and a guy said, if your why isn't big enough, your what won't matter. So to answer your question, I think that to teach people to think critically, like, that's the only way that doors open for themselves. Like, what am I, 23? Maybe like 2-3 years ago, I was in a completely different space than I was now. But I had this one professor named Jared Ball who, like, opened the realm of consciousness, of myself. Like, and all he wanted to do he kept saying, all I want to do is teach you guys to think critically, to think for yourselves. It's like, if you don't think for yourself, how are you going to have hope? How are you going to know what to hope for if you're hopeless? Or why don't you have hope? Why are you hopeless? Why don't you think that these things can change? I think that is really, like, we have to teach youth and people in general, we have to get back to thinking critically. It was a skill that they taught us before. I don't know what they're teaching anymore in school, but that is really, or what the TV's teaching, so.
I would also say that at New Lens, not every young person that comes through our doors pursues higher education. And so there are other safe spaces that you can create where people are listened to. And when people are listened to, that does tend to, it builds trust for one, but then it does create a space of hope. Because the moment that you're able to say who you are and what matters to you, the next step is more available to you. So if somebody cares about what matters to you, you're then more able to think about what you could do about the problems. But how you create those spaces is really, I think, it's not necessarily complicated, but I will say that our space it feels like it is so hard to keep the kind of space that we create available to people, whether that's funding, whether that's just, the busyness and the scramble of things that you need to do to keep projects going. And it requires really a lot of love and open-heartedness to keep creating spaces where people have a voice. So I don't know if that helps at all, but. There's plenty of hopelessness in Baltimore. These are little pockets of spaces in Baltimore that people very intentionally create, where there's thinking happening and hope that's being fostered through listening. Any other? All right, well, thank you very much for inviting us, for having us, for listening.